For more than 1,000 years, Ryomen Sukuna refused to disappear. He lived as a monster during the golden age of Jujutsu. After death, his soul survived inside 20 indestructible fingers. Then one teenager swallowed one of them. And the King of Curses opened his eyes again. But Sukuna's return was never really about Yuji Itadori, because almost from the beginning, he was watching someone else, Megumi Fushiguro. And by the time anyone understood why, Sukuna had already turned Megumi, Mahoraga, and eventually even Gojo Satoru into pieces of a plan that would bring him closer than ever to complete freedom. Quick warning, from this point forward, we're covering Sukuna's entire manga story, including the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen. Over 1,000 years ago, during the Heian Era, the golden age of Jujutsu, Sukuna was already feared as something beyond a normal sorcerer. His life began brutally. According to what we learn much later, Sukuna consumed his own twin while they were still in the womb in order to survive, and what emerged would eventually become a calamity. Sorcerers challenged him, entire elite forces fought him, and they lost. Sukuna slaughtered so many powerful sorcerers that his name became synonymous with terror, while some people even treated him almost like a deity. But Sukuna never seemed interested in ruling anyone. He lived according to one law, his own pleasure and displeasure. That was also why Uraume became one of the extremely rare people allowed to remain at his side. Their usefulness, particularly their ability to prepare food exactly the way Sukuna wanted, earned them a position beside the King of Curses that almost nobody else received. Eventually, Sukuna's original life ended, but he made sure his existence didn't. With Kenjaku's involvement, Sukuna preserved his soul across 20 fingers, each becoming a special grade cursed object that only grew more dangerous with time. 1,000 years passed. Then, Yuji Itadori ate one. Yuji had no idea what he was about to unleash. He only knew his friends were about to die, and swallowing the cursed object might give him enough power to save them. It worked, but it also resurrected Sukuna. The moment Sukuna gained control of Yuji's body, he celebrated being back in flesh and immediately showed exactly what kind of creature had returned. There was just one problem. Yuji took his body back. That shouldn't have been possible. Even Gojo was fascinated. Yuji wasn't simply Sukuna's vessel. He was a cage capable of suppressing him. So, Jujutsu High came up with a dangerous plan. Keep Yuji alive, feed him all 20 fingers, then execute him, and erase Sukuna forever. Sukuna had absolutely no intention of letting that happen. His first real opportunity came inside a detention center. Yuji encountered a finger-bearing special grade curse and was completely overwhelmed. Desperate to save Megumi, Yuji surrendered control, and Sukuna instantly reminded everyone why he was feared. He effortlessly dismantled the special grade, regenerated Yuji's missing hand, and unleashed his domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine. But when the curse was dead, Sukuna didn't switch back. Instead, he ripped out Yuji's heart. Now, if Yuji regained control, he would die. And while Sukuna enjoyed his temporary freedom, Megumi Fushiguro stepped forward to stop him. The fight was horribly one-sided. Sukuna tore through Megumi's Shikigami and overwhelmed him physically. Then something changed. Megumi prepared to unleash a technique so dangerous that Sukuna suddenly became interested. He stopped looking at Megumi like another weak sorcerer. He saw potential. Yuji eventually regained control and died because of his missing heart, but inside their shared inner domain, Sukuna offered him a deal. He would restore Yuji's body under 2 conditions. Whenever Sukuna said the word in-chain, he would gain control for 1 minute, and Yuji would forget they ever made this agreement. Sukuna also promised not to hurt anyone during that minute. Yuji refused. Instead, he challenged Sukuna to a fight. Sukuna killed him almost instantly. The binding vow was sealed, and Yuji forgot everything, meaning Sukuna now possessed a secret 1-minute window that nobody else knew existed. Still, he waited. Later, when Yuji desperately begged Sukuna to save Junpei from Mahito, Sukuna simply laughed and refused, and Mahito soon discovered another problem with Yuji being Sukuna's vessel. Touching Yuji's soul meant getting dangerously close to Sukuna's. Sukuna warned him once. When Mahito did it again, Sukuna cut him apart, not because Sukuna wanted to protect Yuji, but because he refused to tolerate anyone entering his territory. Then came Shibuya. After Gojo was sealed and Yuji was knocked unconscious, Jogo force-fed him enough fingers to push Sukuna to roughly 15 finger strength. For the first time, the King of Curses had prolonged control. In the middle of a city packed with people, Jogo wanted Sukuna to join the curses. Sukuna refused, because he already had plans of his own. Instead, he offered Jogo a challenge: land 1 hit on him. Jogo never came close. Sukuna toyed with him across Shibuya, casually overwhelming everything Jogo threw at him, before finally answering his flames with fire of his own. Jogo was defeated, but then Sukuna sensed Megumi. Megumi had been pushed so far that he summoned the strongest Shikigami of the 10 Shadows technique, Mahoraga, a creature no Ten Shadows user had ever managed to tame, and Sukuna immediately abandoned everything else. He found Megumi, Naham, and healed him, not because he cared whether Megumi lived, but because Megumi still had something Sukuna needed him to do. Then came Sukuna versus Mahoraga. At first, Sukuna's slashes worked, then Mahoraga adapted, and that was when Sukuna understood exactly what made this Shikigami so extraordinary. So he changed strategies. Malevolent Shrine manifested directly into reality, carving apart an enormous section of Shibuya. Buildings, curses, people, everything within its range was shredded, but Mahoraga endured, so Sukuna changed attacks again. Before Mahoraga could fully adapt, Sukuna destroyed it with fire. He had defeated Mahoraga, but more importantly, he had learned how it worked, and that knowledge would eventually decide the biggest battle of Sukuna's life. When Yuji finally regained control, Sukuna made sure he saw what had happened. Entire blocks were gone, countless people were dead, and Yuji had to live with the knowledge that the monster responsible was still living inside him. But Sukuna's real plan was only beginning. During the culling game, Yuji and Megumi searched for Angel, whose technique could potentially free Gojo, but Angel wanted someone eliminated first, a mysterious sorcerer called the Disgraced One. Sukuna privately told Yuji the truth, that was him. Then Megumi's world collapsed. His sister Tsumiki was revealed to be the vessel of the reincarnated sorcerer Yorozu, and Sukuna realized Megumi was finally vulnerable enough. So after waiting almost the entire story in Ana, Sukuna said one word, Enchain. The Forgotten Binding Vow activated. Sukuna gained control for 1 minute, and because he had promised not to hurt anyone, during that minute, he exploited a loophole. Sukuna concentrated his soul into Yuji's finger, ripped it off, and forced Megumi to swallow it. In seconds, Sukuna abandoned Yuji, and reincarnated inside Megumi Fushiguro. The mystery that had existed almost since the beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen finally had an answer. Sukuna wanted Megumi's 10 Shadows technique, but stealing Megumi's body wasn't enough. Megumi was still resisting from inside and suppressing Sukuna's power, so Sukuna decided to completely destroy his will. First came the bath, a ritual designed to sink Megumi's soul deeper into darkness. Then Sukuna targeted Yorozu, who was living inside Tsumiki's body, and Sukuna deliberately defeated her using Megumi's own 10 Shadows technique, meaning from Megumi's perspective, his body, his technique, had just been used to kill his own sister. Megumi's resistance collapsed. Now Sukuna finally had the vessel he wanted, and waiting for him was the only modern sorcerer who could realistically challenge him, Satoru Gojo. The battle began with Gojo firing a boosted hollow purple that tore away Sukuna's arms. Then the real fight started, Infinity versus Shrine, Unlimited Void versus Malevolent Shrine. Gojo dominated stretches of close combat. Sukuna destroyed Gojo's domain from the outside. Gojo changed the conditions of his barrier. Sukuna adapted his strategy. Back and forth they went, until something strange became obvious. Sukuna had stolen one of the most powerful techniques in Jujutsu history, yet he still wasn't fully using it. Then, Mahoraga's wheel appeared. Sukuna had been using Megumi's soul to help shoulder the process of adaptation. He wasn't simply trying to survive Gojo's infinity, he was studying it, waiting for Mahoraga to show him something he could copy. Eventually, it did. Mahoraga adapted to infinity and produced an attack that didn't simply target Gojo, it cut the space itself. And Sukuna finally had his blueprint. Gojo nearly killed him anyway. A massive hollow purple destroyed Mahoraga, eliminated Ejido, and left Sukuna horribly injured. For a moment, it looked like Gojo had won. Then Sukuna attacked. Using Mahoraga's adaptation as a model, he expanded Dismantle's target. He wasn't cutting Gojo anymore. He was cutting the world Gojo existed inside. Infinity couldn't stop an attack that severed the space itself, and with one slash, Gojo Satoru was cut in half. The strongest sorcerer of the modern age was dead. Sukuna had won the battle of the strongest, but defeating Gojo only began Sukuna's final war, because now everyone came for him. Higuruma trapped Sukuna inside his courtroom domain over the Shibuya massacre. The verdict? Confiscation and death penalty. But Sukuna barely cared about being sentenced. He was more interested in seeing Higuruma's executioner's sword. That was Sukuna in his purest form. Even while surrounded by people trying to kill him, he was experimenting, learning, testing how far everyone could go. Then Yuji kept coming. Yuta trapped Sukuna inside his own domain, while Yuji attacked something much more important than Sukuna's body, the boundary between Sukuna and Megumi's souls. Maki drove the split soul katana into him and pushed Sukuna physically hard enough that he became genuinely excited. To Sukuna, Maki represented a question worth answering, which stood at the true peak. A perfected cursed technique or a perfected human body, and then more sorcerers kept appearing. Kusakabe, Miguel, LaRue, Todo, Angel. Even Yuta eventually returned using Gojo's body. One after another. Sukuna survived them, but every single battle took something from him. His output fell, his injuries accumulated, and most importantly, his control over Megumi weakened, because Yuji kept attacking the boundary between their souls. The same kid Sukuna had spent the entire series calling boring, had become the one opponent he could no longer ignore. Then Yuji did something Sukuna never expected, domain expansion. But instead of immediately attacking, Yuji brought Sukuna through memories of his childhood. Ordinary streets, parks, flowers, tiny experiences Sukuna considered completely meaningless. Yuji explained what he had finally understood. A person didn't need some enormous purpose for their life to have value. Sometimes the ordinary memories were enough. Sukuna didn't care. But then Yuji offered him something. Release Megumi. Return to Yuji. And Yuji would allow Sukuna to keep living. Yuji wasn't begging him. He wasn't afraid of him. He was offering Sukuna mercy because he pitied him. And somehow, that enraged Sukuna more than almost anything else Yuji had ever done. He refused, but Yuji's words reached somebody else. Megumi. For the first time in what felt like forever. Megumi fought back from inside, and suddenly Sukuna's control began collapsing. Then the final trap closed. Sukuna discovered that Yuta had bluffed about consuming his last finger. The 20th finger was still somewhere else, and Nobara Kugisaki had finally awakened, from a completely different location. She struck Sukuna's finger with resonance. For one critical moment, the King of Curses was frozen. He couldn't properly defend himself. And Yuji attacked. Dismantle tore into the boundary, separating Sukuna from Megumi. Megumi fought back, and then Yuji Itadori landed a black flash directly into Sukuna's chest. Megumi finally broke free. Without a vessel capable of containing him, Sukuna began to collapse, and even now, Yuji gave him one final choice. Come back into me. Live. Sukuna refused. For the first and only time, he addressed Yuji by his full name, but he would not abandon the identity he had chosen. Ryomen Sukuna had lived as a curse, so he chose to disappear as one. And after his defeat, Sukuna's soul encountered Mahito once more. Mahito suggested that underneath Sukuna's violence was something Sukuna rarely acknowledged. Revenge against the people who had treated him like an abomination. And this time, Sukuna admitted it, which makes his story more than simply the rise and fall of the strongest curse. Sukuna spent his entire existence believing strength was the only truth. He took whatever he wanted, destroyed whatever annoyed him, and treated love, memories, and human connection as weakness. But in the end, Sukuna wasn't defeated because one person became stronger than him. Gojo couldn't do it alone. It took the entire Jujutsu world tearing him down, piece by piece, until the person who finally reached him was the boy Sukuna had dismissed from the very beginning, Yuji Itadori. And if you want to see exactly how Yuji, Gojo, Megumi, Mahito, and everyone else reached the point where Sukuna could turn Shibuya into a nightmare, watch my Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 and 2. Recap everything you need before Season 3 next, because before Season 3, that's the story you need to remember.